What I did is I put your stuff in here.
Okay, so we're live. This is
Just
Senate
for talking,
Transportation.
and then the
It's
cost.
Thursday, March 14th. We have with us Commissioner of DMV, Patrick Murphy from DOT. We're talking today about electric vehicle usage charges and the whole idea behind it. And we wanted to find out what the agency and specifically DMV, who we figure would have to implement it, had to say about. Senator Kitchell is here, and we have Chair Mazza on the screen as well. So,
if Wanda would give me my license back, I'd be all set.
Did I suspend it?
Well, they said because of some medication or something, I shouldn't be driving. So I gotta check with the doctors again. I'm not on that anymore, so maybe I can start driving again and go back up.
I think the commissioner has the capacity just to give you a
Well,
waiver.
that's what I say. I mean, I wish you could do something about it, but you don't know. We could probably give you a 2% raise or something.
That's a deal you guys can work out.
Okay.
So do you guys feel like you understand the question of the day?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the record, Patrick Murphy, Agency of Transportation. This, for more context, this came out of a report on the mileage-based user fee that we've proposed for fully electric vehicles and a slightly increased registration fee for plug-in hybrids. And that's something that we've been working on for the past several years and hoping to implement through federal grant, which has not yet been announced. The funding opportunity was created through the IIJA in 2021 and still has not been announced, but we're expecting that to happen this spring. So the timeline that was initially proposed last year of implementing a program by July of 2025 naturally has to be pushed off. We don't think it needs to be pushed off quite that much. What my last testimony on this was that we might be able to implement something by January of 2026, but it depends entirely on receipt of federal funds to do that.
Okay.
So this sort of question came out of that discussion. If we're not able to implement something in as timely a way as we would hope for, does it make sense to implement a registration fee that's higher for what I understood to be just fully electric vehicles?
Right.
Wanda Manoli, Commissioner of DMV for the record. So in talking with Patrick, last year we amended in the DMV miscellaneous bill, Title 23-361, and it was a notwithstanding on the additional 1.75% increase for special field vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in talking, if you were looking at, if this legislative body wanted to look at closing the gap on this, we did an analysis of putting that language effective immediately. Well, not quite immediately, but we have a date we can talk about where and Patrick did some calculations on where we could increase some fees for the electric vehicles in the interim to get to the program that we're trying to put in place. And then what I did based on looking at that language and modifying them.
Senator Mazza has a question.
When you charge your vehicle electric, do we get a piece of that money, or where does that money go? If you pull up and you charge, it costs you, what do they charge you? $3, $4? I don't know what it costs. Don't we collect anything from them?
No, we've talked about that, trying to have a tax on the kilowatt hours that you buy, but we haven't. There have been difficulties in doing that. So, but we right now we don't get any. The T fund doesn't get any money from that.
So who gets the money? Green Mountain Power or the power companies?
Well, they get it for the power, and then the service provider of the charging station might take some. Sometimes they just pass the total cost along, but sometimes, yeah, they add to the money they're paying for the electricity. They could add to that, and then they just collect that as There's no fees.
Is there any other state that does that? Like when you charge, you get 2% or 3% or whatever it is. It goes that way. You justify the miles you cover. No, nobody does it.
There's any state that has done charging tax yet for
There are, so in our last presentation, there are 7 states that have passed legislation for it. There's only one which has actually implemented it, Montana, I believe. There are few that, I take that back. There are a few that had legislation to implement it as of January of this year. And then there was maybe another that was going, or 2 that were going to implement in January 2025.
Kilowatt hour base?
It was per kilowatt hour, and what was found is just that in Montana was that it was a very high administrative cost that was passed through to the utility.
So how is this system we're going to put down? How's this one going to work? We're going to get a percentage or something, or how's this work?
This is different. This is not trying to collect it on the charging, but on the vehicle. So like when you register your car, if it's an electric vehicle, since you're not paying any gas tax and therefore not supporting road maintenance, you would pay instead a flat fee every year that would go to the T fund to cover that difference.
But if a person drives 100 miles a year or 100,000 miles a year, they pay the same?
Yep.
That's the way it is now.
That's the rub, and that's why the agency, not to speak for the agency, but they supported the miles-based user fee because it's more connected to the miles you drive. This would be maybe an interim step to collect some money from those electric vehicles that are on the road until we get a different system up. Maybe we could do the kilowatt hour charge, maybe in combination with a mileage-based user fee.
Because now the more gasoline you buy, the more you help the state.
Yeah.
So
No, exactly.
everybody pays according to how much they use the highways.
Yeah, that would be ideal, is to try to match it up with that. But that's
Okay,
kind of
thank you.
Senator
If I can make a comment, maybe bring us back to where you were. One concern I would have as a politician, looking at your timeline 2 years out or a year and a half out for when we might implement these mileage-based user fees, those are only going to hit Vermonters. And my request and my inclination would be to want to simultaneously stand up a level 3 direct charge fee so that we could also say we're going to get the out-of-towners, out-of-staters when
Right.
we're also going to be implementing a Vermont-specific charge when they inspect their car.
Yeah, I mean, we did go through some of the challenges with that, particularly where you have folks that don't have access to home charging, which is where most charging happens. And they're then essentially double taxed because they're relying so heavily upon public charging that and any time, as the commissioner has talked about during our stakeholder committee work groups, anytime you have to begin to get into the process of issuing refunds, that becomes more costly to implement. So it's not to say that that's not a possibility. We're continuing to work through what that might look like, but it's at this point not quite in a place where we'd be able to implement it simultaneously.
That makes me, just if I'm still here, less supportive of wanting to put in a mileage-based user fee a year and a half, 2 years out if I can't simultaneously say we're going to collect from the out-of-staters that are also using our roadways and not just Vermonters. But I mean, we can see where it lands.
Right, yeah, and I don't know if
Well, what's
there's,
what,
because it is an issue for those that are using the public chargers. If we had the annual fee and the public charges fee, then they would get double charged, but yeah, okay.
And then there's just the ability to avoid the tax by not using the level 3 charges where it applies. And that might be at hotels where there's level 2 charging overnight and the rest of it. So
Go ahead.
Okay, I just, and when you, I just wanted to, so when you're ready to go back to the discussion with Patrick.
We're ready.
Okay, I'll be happy to. So Patrick and Michelle asked me, if we were to do something interim into the proposal that would have, forward, what would the impact be on DMV? And what would the financial and staffing? So we took an approach of looking at existing language, and that's where I was referring to when we started talking about this last year, Title 23, subsection 361 and 362 defines already a fee for specialized field vehicles. And right now, there's a notwithstanding, and so we would say, if you looked at bringing that back and specifying electric vehicles being charged that registration fee, that is a fairly low cost solution. And absolutely, and I will share with you, so I asked the team to do the best that they could on doing a time frame of, if the legislature were to make this policy and it were to pass, what would it be? They estimated that we would be able to begin with the renewal notice and the new fee with the system around September 2024. They anticipate it's about a 5-week configuration, testing, adjustment, doing the coding, etc. We estimated that we may have to bring in one fast individual, which is our contractor, to focus on this with us, which is about $40,000. And so those were our estimates. And then there will be some increases in some operating costs and maybe communication to the public, but we really didn't break that down. And then I'll let Patrick, I think you did a rough estimate of the dollars around that, if you want to speak to that.
That's right. So it's 1 3/4 times the registration fee. So the additional increment that you would be able to obtain from going through this section of the statute would be about $67, $66.75 per vehicle, and yes, additional.
Oh, I thought it was more like 118 when we,
It would be the total would be, I think, 155.
Yeah.
oh, you're doing it twice a year.
So no, so it's the registration fee that you don't apply the $2 clean air fee.
Oh.
So it's $89, and then it's 3/4. It's 1 3/4 times that, which is where you get the $66.75.
If I may.
Yes,
I
sir.
recall at some point, I thought it was you, but didn't we receive testimony that we calculated the average contribution to the transportation fund from gas taxes per year, per person, per car was $112? Is that what you were recollecting?
Yeah,
The average, and it depends. It changes
I think
based
that
on
study was done before Patrick.
the average is around $170 at this point, given the fuel economy of our fleet. Per year, and that's based upon I believe 12,000 miles traveled. If you're going 15,000, it's going to be probably 200 or above. So one of the sort of challenges to just a flat fee is the impact
We
to
understand that. It's
different
not
people, and
perfect,
so that's the other reason why, if you were to pursue this, it would be better to do something that is at this level and that can be handled when somebody's just purchased a vehicle, rather than getting into the situation which is more costly of having it spaced out across the year and not having it necessarily relate to miles traveled. So you'll capture people that are traveling fewer miles, that might be closer to their average for the year, but you're not capturing that full amount for
So,
the average or above.
so what would be the, based on the number of vehicles in this category that would be subject to it, what would be the annual revenue generated under $67?
So
Because I thought it would be higher than that.
it'd be roughly $500,000
In the first year.
in the first year. So you've got,
Because we're starting partway through the fiscal year.
I'm saying in the first 12 months.
Okay.
So it's, people have different registration times, so it'll be kind of, it will be a gradual receipt of funds, but in the first 12 months, it'll be about $500,000, because you have about 8,000 vehicles registered now.
Who would
That's
who would verify the mileage traveled?
Verify the miles traveled, is that what the question was?
Yeah, who would verify that?
You don't use
Well, that's, if we did the mile-based usage fee, there would be the odometer reading when you get your car inspected would be one way they could do it.
Oh, once a year.
Yeah,
Then you'd hold that money once a year?
yeah. That's one way to do it. Or you could attach a GPS to your car and then they would know how far you traveled in the state versus out of state, but there's a lot of issues with people not wanting the government to have a GPS on their car.
Okay.
So the proposal was do it on the annual safety inspection.
That only gets Vermonters.
But the
That only
67,
gets- Well, except that we now allow more non-Vermonters to register their vehicles.
Couple of
67 seems low.
And so it's for
As a
that,
foregone revenue that,
yes, so it's not collecting what you would through a mileage-based user fee. And what we had proposed was the
doesn't
mileage-based
even
user
seem
fee
like it
and to
would
be
be
able,
the average for what people are paying as gas tax equivalent.
that's right.
Well, there is some evidence that electric vehicles are traveling less. Sometimes people don't use their electric vehicle for their longer distance travel. So it might be more closer to what electric vehicles travel, but I think the dollar amount would be, so that's what you guys are suggesting, because that's what you had in your other proposal, the 1.75.
We have that in our original proposal for the plug-in hybrids as an amount to be able to collect once we
Oh, 'cause-
implement a mileage-based
Oh.
user fee,
But not the all electric.
but not the all-electric. That was going to be the mileage based user fee. And the key piece of that was that there'd be an ability to pay as you go, to have those payments spaced out through the year, so it's not a huge amount right at the beginning. That might discourage, research hasn't shown that, but that might discourage EV adoption.
So there should,
Is there a world where your systems could, in the next fiscal year, charge $67 for any battery electric vehicle that's greater than 5 years old and $170 for any vehicle that is less than 5 years old?
So the core
I
system.
thought you were gonna use the word ad valorem.
Well,
So the core system, we have many opportunities, and that we can do. But every caveat that you add to it takes longer to build out, takes more testing and may be more costly. And that's just, and that is in the world of IT modernization. So, just to speak to, that's an option. If you were to do this fee and a surcharge, I know that it takes us, from September to January, we add that time on because you add another layer. I did some discussions with my teams, if just looking at different, potentials. So the more we bring in, the more we have to test and the more we have to develop a line and communicate. So I'm not going to take a position on your recommendation, but you have the ability with the system to create different paths than you used to with just a mainframe and programming.
So
Great investment,
I
thank
want to
you.
get back because to our earlier discussion, we were trying to recognize with a plug-in hybrid, they were still paying. And that's why we set it at a different rate than an all EV. So the question I have is, would you have like we had talked about, a differential rate between a vehicle that is actually would be subject to this add-on of registration plus paying at least some of the mileage through the gas consumption, through the gallonage tax, as opposed to an all EV. So that's why the 67 seemed low in that regard, because we would not be in any way differentiating between a plug-in hybrid and an all electric.
So
And the question is, should that be a higher 100%, for example?
So I think if you're looking for a bridge to a mileage-based user fee and that flat fee, that the recommendation not be to apply the language from 362, Title 23, 362 to a plug-in hybrid yet. It would be, you apply that when you have a mileage-based user fee in place, so that all that you would be addressing right now is just
The all EVs.
fully electric vehicles. And that's in line with, the only state which is currently authorized to move forward with a mandatory mileage-based user fee is Hawaii, and that's in line with their flat fee, which is currently set at $50.
So why are we applying the plug-in hybrid formula to the all EV when we were trying to distinguish between the two? Why would it not be at the estimated average replacement of the gas tax?
I
What's the
think,
policy basis for that?
well, I think when you're looking at something that ideally would be sunsetted to align with the implementation of mileage-based user fee, you're looking at a very small window here of having the
Well, you're
fee.
optimistic.
Fee in place. Well, you have to be, really.
Well,
And-
luck of
And it exists, so it's a quick interim action
So what is
item.
the language? Can you remind me in what?
So it's Title
statutory?
23, 362. It was modified last year to, as the commissioner said, to notwithstand that for pleasure cars. So it still applies to heavier duty electric vehicles at the moment, but does not apply to what's defined as a pleasure car if it's powered by electricity.
This
and
allows you
or-
to do it. Then we said, don't do it?
We did a notwithstanding, the language is attached, Senator.
So if you were to do something, Senator Kitchell asked about the policy basis for us. If you were to do something quickly in the interim to act as a bridge, it seemed simplest to use existing statutory language that had been modified last year to be able to capture some revenue, to not have the issue of having a very large fee right at the point of registration for new EV owners, and then to be able to kind of make that transition into a mileage-based user fee when that is ready. So, it might be 2 years, you might sunset it at 3 years, it might be sunsetted at 3 years, or the implementation of mileage-based user fee, whichever is less. Obviously that's up to your discretion, but.
Okay, Senator Schindler?
So this interim that I don't think I heard you say the word recommendation, but it's unclear to me if you are recommending this interim charge. But whatever the case may be, if it were to go forward, there would be a check at registration for if the vehicle was a battery electric vehicle, and you would use the VIN in order to determine that, and then it would actually assess a surcharge, an additional amount. So that's what this would contemplate. I'd just be curious how difficult it would be to assess other things, including the year of the vehicle. If we're already checking to see if its fuel source is battery electric, that
Why do
simultaneously.
you need to know that?
Well, if we wanted
We
to,
just do it all EVs.
because I'm thinking of the person that's taking advantage of our drive electric or the buy or
Well,
do your ride.
we had talked about like
little hybrid.
doing a 2-year, a 6-month billing, so you split it to deal with the affordability.
Just somebody who buys a beater electric vehicle, I feel like they should pay less than somebody who's buying a brand new Tesla in the new station in South Burlington.
That sounds like a ad valorem by a different name.
Anglicized
To
That's why
simplify,
people didn't know what the Latin meant.
Other states do it.
so when the vehicle is registered, it goes into the system as the type of vehicle that it is, and then the renewals would be based on that. So I'm really trying to be very simple. If, for example, you were to adopt this interim proposal that we've been discussing, then those 8,000 vehicles, the system would just change their registration costs. And they would get their notice in January, if that's when the car is registered, and instead of being $89, it's now gonna be $155. And I'm really trying to, it would be that simple. Obviously, behind the scene, it would take a little bit more to get there. So, other stuff so it's not checking we would use the system of record and registration to realign the registration fee and give them appropriate notice in statute.
I want to keep it simple, but I'm just thinking $67. during a 2 or 3 year period is a pretty modest addition. And that's why I'm thinking if we're really looking at just the EVs, that something a bit more than that seems to be more warranted at this time. That's my only question about using the 1 3/4, which was for the plug-in hybrid, to be the amount used for the all EV. So that's
just
really
wanna-
what I'm looking
I
at.
just want to clarify one point. That language for the 1 3/4 pre-existed the discussion around applying it to plug-in hybrids. We were,
Well, we can
looking-
change it. We don't need to be chained by it.
no, so if, but that currently applies to all heavier duty electric vehicles. So what's being collected now for, 12,000 pound vehicle is that 1 3/4 times registration fee, even if it's fully electric.
Now,
Yes,
Based on weight.
based on weight, yeah.
So back to understanding you're analyzing this policy and you're having discussions. If you still stayed within Title 23, 361 and 362, and you wanted to do a 2.5, I'm just using a number, you would still be in the same time frame of and what we talked about as far as the system goes regarding the policy. I think that's further discussion. I want to say to the committee, because you used I think maybe I heard surcharge, or that's in my mind, and maybe a possible dual payment or splitting it up. That becomes the most costly option for you, and we're looking at, we estimated over $500,000 just to make that change in the system, because it would really, it's much deeper in billing those registrations and getting them out. And so I just want to put that out there for the committee, and it would take considerably longer. I think we were looking
Until January.
January,
If you had to do two bills a year.
if you had to do 2 bills a year. And my team really pushed on me, and I'll share it with the committee. They said, well, what's the penalty if they don't pay? They, if they pay the first and then you bill them the second and they don't pay.
you got the same problem even if it's a year. Right.
Well, right, you don't have a registration, but you sort of get a half registration, and I think
Right.
that's where they were going.
Yeah.
And,
What do you do?
I said, well, that would be something that,
No, you'd have to, the registration it would have to be aligned with the payment period, that's
Right.
true.
so.
Do you have an opinion, either one of you, on where the money would go? There's been some suggestion that if we were to do this, that some of the money or all the money go to support the vehicle charging infrastructure.
For public transportation.
Or public transportation.
Or we don't need to,
I'm just saying, if we did, you care? I'm sure you do.
I don't think there's,
I don't
Matter,
have
it doesn't matter operational.
Why wouldn't it just go into the fund so we can have our own,
that's usually rather than out, putting,
why
Creating
would we
special
wanna,
funds are
you're right,
difficult.
why would we wanna pigeonhole it, cause we can.
no, I was saying if you dealt with, putting more revenue in, it would allow us the flexibility to put it here or there. Right now, the House is funding their charging station, that section,
Right.
by taking money out of maintenance. That's my point, is that this would allow a very good nexus, whether it's public transit or whether it's, a charging stations, or you wanna split it up. I mean, I don't really like balkanizing your ability to move your money to where you want to, so.
Right.
But it was in the context of, rather than cannibalizing what's already in competition for T-fund spending, is if we could get some additional revenue, then it would allow us to support without the negative impact on other parts of the budget.
yeah, I think I can say that the agency is not supportive of that other section, section 2.
To
of the
1.7
H.868, the transportation bill.
to the charging.
Oh, that's section 2 of the bill, that moves that 1.7 million right out of it.
It takes money out of the maintenance budget and repurposes that. So that would create problems both for the maintenance budget, but also public transit, which is expecting the carbon reduction program funds for e-Sprinter vans that we just talked about earlier. So if there were to be a funding for EV charging to continue that programming, then this would be a better spot to draw from.
Help support that rollout.
Okay.
But I would further clarify that this whole discussion, I think, came out of committee discussion around this desire to get interim money basically and have a bridge to the mileage-based user fee, which the administration has
Yeah,
proposed.
well, keep it simple. The question is 67, on the right track.
1.75
Or what of other states, and I was trying to look, because I know that we got that chart, what some other states have done relative to just an add-on to the registration, which is simplest, it is simple. I mean, not
Well, they've done a very
that it
low.
doesn't take work.
$50 the lowest.
$50 was Hawaii and some others. I can reshare that after.
I'm sure we've got it here in staff.
Yeah.
So I know we've heard this before, but simple isn't necessarily the fairest, and I'd be supportive of having plug-in electric vehicles that or plug-in hybrids have a smaller assessment, like $29 or $30, because they are contributing less to the tax, to the fuel fund, the transportation fund, because they're not paying the gas taxes, and then a larger amounts. But I know then you start, you would be concerned.
Well, I mean, we already have that in our system because it's existing statute. I think it's just that we're, you may want to, do you want to apply that sooner than later? Right? And
It's very easy vehicle type, you get this add-on vehicle type.
it's all connected to their current registration in the system. And so that's where the logic and the ability to implement sooner really occurs.
But it wouldn't be extra time if it was just plug-in and all EVs. Like that's.
Well, I think we'd have to talk about that more. In the past, it's been difficult in the prior system to identify plug-in hybrids versus conventional. So we'd have to explore that a bit.
Yeah,
more.
we'll confirm. I believe with the transition, we may have identified them, and that's why, so we'll come back to you on that.
Yeah.
Because it's not always obvious, and I'm not sure that it's 100% accurate
Right.
when you get the VIN that it's been categorized properly as a plug-in hybrid versus conventional. So
Okay, that would be good to know.
You're saying
Oh, I got mine.
batteries, right? So BEVs and PEVs, that's the right terminology.
And so a battery electric vehicle is fully electric or all electric vehicle, and then a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle is PHEV. Yes.
Even though they have batteries.
Even
Of course,
though
everybody's gonna plug in, so I'm gonna get my plug in.
Okay.
Of course, we can make this all go away by just charging them for what they use, so when they plug in their vehicle, and we can do that, we're getting closer to that, so. We can make it all go away and just do it one time, because then we don't have to stand up a program, we know we're gonna change later. So we can wait and do it the right way, or we can do it this way.
No, I'm not talking about not doing it the right way. I'm saying by the time we can do the right way, it's probably 3 or 4 or 5 years out.
We can do it now, we just gotta get them in here and set them all down.
This is-
Let me at them,
Still think the technology's there, the infrastructure.
let me at
5
them,
years maybe.
But,
get it.
so I just feel that the revenue situation, and obviously if we want to do more in this area, then, and from a public perspective, people, there is, I mean, even one of our colleagues had his freeloader bill and saying that this is a group of users of the system, and right now they're not contributing, and they say they want to, so I don't want to deprive them of that opportunity.
Roads need to be paved, plowed and painted, so.
Somebody around in this committee room has a all-electric Lyric, and he certainly can afford to be additional.
What's a Lyric? Never heard of that.
Cadillac Lyric, it's a very sweet car.
Being paid.
Huh?
Do you guys have
They were
any
67 bucks.
representing GM or the auto dealers, do you have any interest in testifying on this, even now or in the future, on this topic?
I think it depends where it goes. I think our testimony hasn't really changed, that we would prefer the just increase in the registration fee over some of the other more complicated and complex approaches. And
Can you identify yourself for the record?
Justin Johnson,
Lyric owner.
You represent, who you represent?
GM.
And do the auto dealers want to testify on this in the future, or they don't care, you're just here to listen in? You're listening about this time. Thank you for that. Okay. Is anybody?
Vice Chair, we already testified on this. This
Right.
is Wayne Michael from the Alliance
Yeah.
for Automotive Innovation, yes. And Bridget Morris for the record.
Okay. Do you have anything else for you guys?
I don't think so.
No, we'll get back to you. I will validate the categorization of the
Yeah,
hybrids
that's,
and, see how far we've come along with that, okay?
okay, great. Well, thank you for your time.
Sure,
Thank you.
That's all we had on our, oh no, we have, Sarah's still in house.
Yeah, they expected her to be done, I heard 10 minutes ago, in about 10 minutes.
Okay.
So that's like 10 of 12, that's hardly.
Well, no, that was 10, it was 10 minutes.
10 minutes ago, so it could be right now. You could walk in the door any second. So does the committee want to have a quick discussion on this, or do you want to wait for more information?
Well, I feel we should keep it simple, and I think an add-on based on vehicle type is the easiest way to go. 67 AM, that's modest.
Yeah.
And I agree, long term, but I don't think the technology, and so I think to go 3 or 4 years without this revenue, is forego, I mean, you know, so I'm just saying, how do we bridge until we can get to, you know, where we want to be in a more sophisticated way.
I agree with that approach. I think we're leaving money on the table, and I think I like simple because I don't want to tear down what we might get to later. And because I think that we don't know what it's gonna be. So let's make it simple, but let's collect some money. But I do think $67 is low.
I'm of the same mind, I'm just not scared of complexity, so I think if we wanted to find more monies, we're leaving money on the table, looking
Well,
at 3 rates or 3 different rates.
Well, I don't have a problem with actually doing a differential rate and doing a smaller amount to the plug-in hybrid.
Yeah.
About newer versus older cars.
No, I don't see that makes any difference to me. It's vehicle type, not age.
We tax lyrics higher.
We already do when at point of purchase.
But also I have to look at the amount of monies that we're gonna collect at $500,000. By the time I go get set up and all of that stuff, I know it's money, but then you have to, I don't know if $500,000 is enough to even set this thing up.
Well, that's driven by the 67
Right.
amount, which I feel is a little modest in the scheme of things.
I agree with that.
And once you set it up, you know how difficult it is to alter it. You can't say, well, let's plug it in and then next year move it, in light of recent
It
experience.
is a big change for those that didn't pay it, but they shouldn't be paying the road usage, but it's gonna be as a percentage for those.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have been trying to get more low-income Vermonters into these vehicles, so for some of those people, it's gonna be a big change.
I don't think I'd have the same opinion if we weren't sitting on a very successful implementation of a brand new system that should have a lot of capabilities to do this more easily, so.
I agree with that.
Well, that's why having the 2 rates is, I don't think it's terribly complex.
Yeah,
It just depends on how much the bin can identify it clearly.
yeah, we'll have to hear back.
We'll have to hear that.
So it sounds like Chair Coffey won't be here for another 10 minutes, which I think doesn't really give us enough time to be worth to start it. So why don't we adjourn for the day? And then if you can let him know to not worry about it, or I'll talk.
Yeah,
to her
sure.
in the hallway. We'll just
Well, we ought to save her the walk anyways.
Yeah, we'll find her some other time next week, I guess. Because I assume tomorrow, unless there's some time tomorrow.
I'll take a look.
Yeah, okay.